One of the most pressing questions about modern Islam is this: can Islam be reformed? And a question derived from that is, why hasn't Islam been reformed yet? In order to answer these questions, we need to understand what impact Reformation and, as a consequence, the Enlightenment have had on European Christianity and society overall. Of course, this is going to be a very broad and goal-oriented overview. First off, the theological differences. The Reformation of medieval Christianity was more or less inevitable. In many ways, the political system that Catholicism had become was at odds with the teachings of Jesus Christ. St. Paul, one of Jesus' alleged disciples, is more of a founding figure for Catholicism than Jesus himself is. The teachings of Jesus in the New Testament simply don't provide you with a coherent political ideology, which means that as soon as translations of the Bible had been made available to the wider public, the power of the Vatican was bound to crumble. Christianity as a political ideology is very much open to debate, as the only rules and laws the Bible provides you with are contained in the Old Testament. And Jesus, being a Jewish dissident, so to speak, provides Christians with a great tool to pick and choose what laws to follow and what laws not to follow. This, combined with the rediscovery of ancient philosophy, created an intellectual tradition of critical introspective, in short, the Enlightenment. In comparison, the teachings of Muhammad are much more political and worldly. He was a political player and founder of a state as well as a religion, after all. And as I explained in a previous video, the Quran contains much more direct rules and laws, which are, above all else, unchangeable, according to God himself. An important historical difference between the Christian and Islamic world is the introduction and success of the printing press. The fact that access to religious as well as political and philosophical knowledge was made available to many people in Christian Europe due to this invention had a huge impact on society overall. In the Islamic world, however, this invention wasn't very successful. Although the technique of printing with movable blocks probably first appeared in the Islamic world in the 9th or 10th century and therefore predates the Gutenberg printing press, it never took off. The European printing press was introduced in the Ottoman Empire in the late 15th century, but due to religious opposition, printing in Arabic was prohibited on penalty of death and didn't take off until the 19th century. It was imported to Egypt, Persia and the Lebanon as well, but again, due to religious reasons, only non-Muslim minorities were allowed and able to use this tool. Thus, one of the most groundbreaking inventions of Europe didn't reach the Ottoman Empire and the Middle East in general, and the interpretation of Islamic religious texts was left to conservative religious authorities for centuries to come. We cannot underestimate the negative effect this has had on the Muslim world in terms of breaking religious power. The worldwide introduction and above all else success of the internet may give us some hope, but how much of a positive impact it's going to have and how soon this will have an effect remains to be seen. Why is all this so important? Mainstream Islam is lacking critical introspective, both within the Islamic world as well as outside. We can witness this in the always returning mantra of Islam is a religion of peace whenever a religiously motivated terrorist attack happens. Of course, individual Muslims may not believe in violence as a political tool or even Sharia law. They may very well be sincere in their claim that for them, Islam is in fact a religion of peace. But as long as these moderate Muslims claim that all religious violence we see in the world is a misinterpretation of their scripture rather than one legitimate interpretation amongst many, they aren't going to be part of the solution. They are not part of the problem at best. The same goes for their Western allies, mainly within the political left. The fact that Muslims are minorities in Western countries mustn't prevent us from criticizing their religious ideas just because we are scared of stirring up resentment against this religious minority. Preserving social peace is always a dance on top of a volcano. It may erupt in one way or the other, but we mustn't stop dancing. Sounds like some dumb Facebook post, but I hope you get my meaning. Critical introspective does have its side effects, as witnessed in the prevalent self-flagellation of people in the West. We are aware of our historical misgivings, mistakes and crimes, and for too many people this results in total moral and cultural relativism. It's still an advanced philosophical habit, a habit we should keep and try to export to other cultures rather than get rid of it ourselves. I think that the Islamic world, and of course individual Muslims, are capable of establishing a tradition of enlightened thinking. They surely have an even rockier road ahead of them than Christians have had due to a number of theological and societal factors. But we can't wait for this to happen. And we sure can't wait for the political conflicts and perpetual wars in the Middle East to end. Successfully debating religious zealots of any stripes is a frustrating process that tends not to lead anywhere. Successfully debating moderates is a completely different thing, but in order to even start this debate, Muslims have to break the wheel of denial themselves. The only thing secularists can do to help is keep engaging them rather than cuddling them and perpetuating the myth that their religion isn't responsible at all. I have my doubts about us being able to break this wheel.
It's a beautiful dream. Stopping the wheel. You're not the first person who's ever dreamt it.
I'm not going to stop the wheel. I'm going to break the wheel.
I talked to a pot-smoking, peace-loving and very intelligent Muslim for whom religion isn't more than a spiritual approach to life a couple of weeks ago, and even he wasn't willing to accept that Islamic dogmas are at least partially to blame for the violence we see in the world. Instead, he explained the concept of cultural racism to me and deflected when I asked him about specific teachings of Muhammad. It's one thing when Christians explain away sinister teachings of their scripture and claim that they mean
something completely different.
It's quite another thing when Muslims aren't even willing to acknowledge the fact that their scripture contains sinister teachings at all. I'm the Thoughtful Contrarian. Feel free to rate, comment, share and subscribe.